Is your mental health practice buried in the bottom of Google search results? There's a way out. Simplified SEO Consulting offers a roadmap to search engine success. As mental health professionals, they know how to help therapists attract ideal clients and build a thriving practice. Go to simplifiedseoconsulting.com/modern therapist to learn more and unlock your SEO potential this summer.
Considering a transition to private pay? Thrizer can help you transform out-of-network therapy to look and feel like an in-network experience for your clients. Your clients just pay co-insurance for sessions instead of waiting weeks for reimbursement. Thrizer covers the rest of your fees so you get paid in full upfront. Check out our special link, join.thrizer.com/modern therapist, and use the code Modern Therapists to activate $2,500 in free payments with Thrizer.
You're listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide, where therapists live, breathe, and practice as human beings. To support you as a whole person and a therapist, here are your hosts, Curt and Katie Vernoy.
Welcome back, Modern Therapists. This is the Modern Therapist Survival Guide. I'm Curt and Katie Vernoy, and this is the podcast for therapists about the things that go on in our profession, the things that we do, the trends that we see going on. And I have been an educator, a supervisor for a large portion of my career. I've worked with a lot of people at various points in their career. And one of the things that I've seen is people who want to become therapists and then realize that it's a lot more than just sitting down and talking with people. There's a lot of personal aspects that come into things. There's a lot of just extra work that goes along with things. And then you add in the whole entrepreneurial side of stuff that just doesn't seem to be something that gets added in. And so at various points, people have conversations with me, whether it's as students, whether it's once they've finished their degree, and they're just saying, I don't know how to sustain this. I don't know how to remain in this. And we are welcoming back our good friend, Stevon Lewis, LMFT, to help us kind of navigate this conversation, be able to kind of take it from maybe some of the grizzled veterans that are here on the podcast today, as far as like, what does it take to sustain being in the field? So thank you so much for joining us once again, Stevon.
Oh, thanks for having me, you two. Grizzled veterans, I love it.
So we'll ask you again the question that we ask everyone. Who are you and what are you putting out into the world?
I am Stevon Lewis. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I have a podcast called How to Talk to High Achievers About Anything. I've written a book on imposter syndrome. That's where I live, and all things imposter syndrome and silencing our inner bullies. And what I'm putting out into the world now is the idea of radical acceptance of self. So I really want people to get to a place of where they can be really proud of themselves while they are still working towards being better versions of who they are.
So let's talk about sustainability, like what it is that keeps us around. What are some of the practices that we end up doing? How do we just deal with all of it in a way that allows for us to continue to show up for our clients and continue to show up doing what it is that we do?
That's a great question. I think that in order to stay in this field, you have to find what you like about it. And that can shift, and you have to be open to pivoting. As an example for myself, when I was in school studying to become a therapist, I thought that I wanted to work with couples. And so I did. And I branded myself as, a couples therapist, and deciphering relationships was kind of the theme. I had a blog, and I worked with couples for years, and I realized that no longer was the population that really fed me and got me excited about waking up to do the work I do. And so I made a pivot. And I think when we talk about sustainability, if you stay in a space or stay doing work that isn't inspiring or fulfilling or fun, even, because I think that's part of it, like we're helping people, but we want to enjoy doing that help, then you won't be able to last long term.
Well, you've pivoted a number of times, right? I mean, you started working in the, kind of educational college student space, and then you were doing couples, and now you're doing high achievers, imposter syndrome, radical self-acceptance. How did you come to the decision to make those shifts when you did?
Oh, you guys have great questions, really great questions. I did do a few different things. Some of it was out of necessity. I don't want to, pretend like, oh, this was all intentional. Sometimes it was, I don't like where I'm working currently, and I want to get somewhere else, and this seems new and fun and exciting. So I think that's how I ended up at the college, working with college students and being director of counseling services there. I think the changes come for me when I recognize, and I think I'm really good about doing this because I stay kind of connected to my own feelings. I like to be happy, really, really happy. And so I'm constantly kind of curating my life so that I am getting to a place of happiness. And what I was finding is that I was not as happy as I would like to be doing the work I was doing. And so when I get to a place of where, I am having to have sessions and I'm not looking forward to that's a sign for me that I need to kind of take an evaluation of what's going on. Is it me and I need rest, or is it that the work I'm doing is no longer fulfilling me in the way that I am? And I'm okay with acknowledging the truth of that, because people deserve to have a therapist that is motivated and excited and really encouraged to work with them. And if that's not me, then that needs to, change. And so when I made the pivot from working with couples to high achievers, the high achievers were the ones that were kind of getting me excited about. I was just fascinated by them. And I was like, I could have a practice full of these folks, and I'd be excited to get on a call or meet with them at any chance I got. It's fun for me.
What is your process, or what has been your process in looking at yourself? Because underneath this, and having known you over the years, there's an ongoing process that I think that the people who are able to sustain and to be able to tend to themselves ends up being kind of a necessity. And some of the people that I've worked with or was referring to at the top of the episode, not to say that they're not necessarily doing that, but there's kind of an acceptance in the constant need to go back and attend to this. Can you describe a little bit more of like how you come back to this over and over again?
You're correct that oftentimes I think what we do when we become therapists is we tell ourselves a narrative about how that's going to look. And we say, okay, I'm going to do these things, and this is how I'm going to help people, and this is how I will make money, and my business is structured as such. I think I get to a place of where I'm constantly thinking about, and this is probably going to sound bad, am I working too hard? I'm a person who likes ease. I told you I like happiness. I like simple. I like flowers, nice and soft, gentle. I don't like to force things to happen. So I'm really big on alignment. And I think if I feel like I am having to work too hard, meaning that to get myself kind of energized to do the work, or that the progression of the work I'm doing with people isn't really happening, I am not trying to blame other people and say like, oh, well, they're just being resistant, or, it's the client's fault. I really look at myself. I might not be the person to be doing this. And I'm okay with that. I've accepted the fact that I'm not going to be, everybody's favorite therapist or the perfect therapist for everybody, even though we might start out down that path, hoping that that's what the relationship will blossom into. But I am okay with saying like, I am not doing a really good job at this. I should probably pivot and do something, and you deserve better. And I'm okay doing that more frequently maybe than the average person might be.
It seems like when people aren't able to do that, it's from this place of overwhelm, from kind of the grind. I got to keep grinding it out. I got to keep trying. And it feels like there's also, it might be hard to identify, is this hard because I haven't learned how to do it yet? Or is this hard because it's misaligned? Where do you go with trying to sort through those things?
That is the conundrum, right? It's the idea that, am I giving up? And that's the thing. I don't want to feel like, oh, I'm quitting because it was difficult. I'm trying to be as objective as possible and saying, am I helping this person? And if I'm not helping this person, Why is that? I think the thing that makes it a little bit easier for me is that I didn't, or at times when, I kind of have shifted, I've not had all the same client. So it's a little bit easier to kind of see like, okay, if I'm working with couples this way and I'm working with individuals and I'm working with some, older people or younger people and men, women, like what have you across the spectrum, I can look at that diversity and say, okay, I'm doing really well here and I'm not doing so well here. Why is that? And so it's not like I get caught up in the fact that I'm now characterizing or seeing myself as not good or bad or giving up. It's no, I'm trying to provide a good service and I'm doing what I think will work, and it's not getting the results here and it is getting the results over here. The way I like to work, or kind of, and I think about sustainability, is I want to kind of do things that are good and feel good and are also getting good outcomes, right? So that the places where I am helping people is the stuff I want to do. And that doesn't mean that they're all easy clients or it's easy work. It means that we are aligned and we are both getting what we want from the relationship. They are getting the help they need and they are progressing and overcoming the issues that they came to me with. And I am helping them be or get to a place where they will be independent of me. And that's the goal. I'm putting myself out of a job.
Well, I'm actually thinking more even with the pivot and the branding. I mean, like that is a huge undertaking to go from couples to high achievers. And I don't remember if you did kind of couples, high achieving couples, high achievers. Like I don't know if you did a whole like strategic thing, but like thinking about I have a whole caseload that's this, or even a mixed caseload that's primarily this, like it's a lot of work to create almost a new brand, and it can feel really overwhelming at first. And so I can see people giving up there too.
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought about it like that. Like the way you explained it would have probably been a better process to do, is to kind of titrate from one and gradually shift to another. I didn't do that. It was kind of a hard stop. It was like, okay, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. Pause on that. I'm going to go do this other thing. And the way I did it, I guess, was I stopped taking on couples and found a bunch of colleagues who were, happy to work with couples and started referring couples out there. Yeah, I did have to put in work. I changed kind of language on my website and wherever I kind of, can be found on social media, and work to kind of close out or terminate with the couples that I did have. And I never thought about it of like a thing where that can be scary and that can be difficult, because I know that, again, the work we do, our money's attached to who we work with. By default, then that means I'm probably going to make less money, because I'm not going to be seeing as many people. But then I also kind of operate with a belief that I was going to attract the folks that I wanted. And if I did that really well with attracting couples when I wanted to work with couples, then I would do the same kind of with high achievers. But I could see why somebody might want to stay kind of what they had. Like I built a brand around couples, and I was on podcasts talking about couples and doing that. And I was just like, yeah, that's not it anymore.
You even were on a TV show doing stuff about couples.
Yeah,
You had lots of visibility around this.
I did. Well, if anything, I take that as a compliment that once I'm dedicated to a space, I'm gonna push really, really hard and be very intentional about the stuff I'm doing.
Feeling like your ideal clients just can't find you online? There's a better way with Simplified SEO Consulting. They're a team of mental health marketing specialists who understand the unique challenges therapists face in the digital world. Forget wasting time on confusing SEO tactics that leave you feeling frustrated and out of the loop.
Simplified SEO Consulting offers a range of proven solutions to fit your practice needs, from DIY courses that empower you to take control, to done with you coaching that provides expert guidance at every step, to their individualized done for you SEO plans that let you focus on your clients while they handle the details. Plus, they have an innovative content network program that has set practices across the country apart from the rest. When you're ready to start showing up in front of your ideal clients online, the expert team at Simplified SEO Consulting is ready for you.
Visit simplifiedseoconsulting.com/modern therapist to schedule your free consultation and find the perfect SEO plan to unlock the full potential of your practice. Don't forget to mention Modern Therapist Survival Guide podcast for $100 off your done-for-you SEO onboarding, or use code Modern Therapist for 20% off a DIY SEO course this summer. I want to talk about the role of privilege in this as well, because I think that there's
Stevon is laughing so hard.
well, if I'm somebody who's early on in my career listening to this conversation, we're all talking about this from the place of like, we have done this. There is the ability for some people to get into this, but what you've described so far is you have the agency to kind of shift your private practice, the self agency, not a mental health agency, but like you have the agency to be able to make these shifts. You have the privilege of being able to step back, take a dip in pay, to be able to do this. What's our advice to people earlier in their career who may not have these opportunities yet when facing like, I don't have a choice of being able to just highly select really easy clients. I don't have the ability to pick, like, you started the episode with like, the parts of the job that don't fulfill you. Taking notes doesn't fulfill a lot of people. Like, so, for the people who don't have as much agency, what is your advice to them?
Well, I still do notes. You don't get out of that part. That's a requirement. That's like the law. But no, I follow. Like, I guess the thing is this, is that when I started out, I recognized that we sometimes have to do things that aren't ideal for us. I started out, I was in community mental health, working with families. I was,
that's the part that I want to get across to our audience is how do you build the sustainability at the point where it's like, I might not be signing up for all of this. I know I hear from a lot of people who are considering leaving like in the midst of grad school. Like I did not have a realistic expectation of what coming into this field even was, that I think is something where it's like, okay, on the other side, once you get licensed and you have this practice where you get to handpick all these nice clients, then you can do all these things. But like for people who are starting to face some of these realities earlier on, all three of us worked in community mental health for periods at one point or another. Like we didn't get to pick who was coming into us. And sometimes that was less than fun. How did you get through that part of your career?
I like it. One, I'll say temper your expectations. So the reality is that unless you are working for yourself, you won't have full autonomy on what you want to do and who you want to work with and how that looks. So when I was in community mental health, I knew that it was kind of an education. And I was, again, this is like after obviously finishing school and stuff like that, but still it's a learning of the field, and that I'm going to have to take on work that is not who I would choose or what I would choose to do, because I work for an agency or a company. When I worked at the university, I work with the college students. They can come in for a variety of reasons. I don't get to decide what which students I get to work with. It's who needs help. And I think if you temper your expectations around that, once you're in private practice, that's when you get to really curate and design, your kind of niche or bespoke practice. Until then, you've got to be flexible and open to working with other people or clients that, may not be your ideal client. Also, there's something to learn from that. There's a benefit to, working outside of your comfort zone. It stretches and I think shapes some skills that maybe I wouldn't have developed if I just worked with folks that I liked and enjoyed all the time. And it helps you kind of be better at who you are and what you want to do. Like you understand yourself more of like, 2-year-olds or 5-year-olds are not going to be my clients. And that's okay, because there's a therapist out there that's going to be phenomenal with that population. And that's who we should get them to. And that's okay. And I think that's the hard part, is recognizing that your expectation of what this is going to look like and that it's always going to be good is not it's not accurate or not based in reality. I mean, even when I started my private practice and, look at me being all vulnerable and transparent, I kind of contracted with, I think it was Torrance Police Department. And I was getting, referrals for uh, youth kind of connected to the juvenile justice system. And this is in my private practice, but this is, I opened a private practice. I now had office space. I now needed to make some money to pay for that space. I need to be able to work with some people that I think I have some, I guess, experience with, because I was doing that at the agency I was working at. And then I translated that into private practice. So my private practice had clients that mirrored what I was doing at community mental health in the beginning. But that was to get going. And I think that that's kind of it. I didn't get to my dream car as my first car, but that doesn't mean, I didn't learn how to drive well.
It's so interesting because I think that there's a lot of folks who are impatient. I mean, I'm sure we all were impatient, but I think there's a lot of folks who are impatient and see whether it's working for an agency or taking clients that pay less or have a kind of the run up before you can really create this solid foundation. They see that as settling or not doing well or not doing what's there. And I think this conversation's a little bit different because we're talking about like everyone has that story of how they ramped up. I mean, people don't start in private practice and immediately have a full caseload of high fee clients.
Yep.
I don't know that maybe somebody with a huge social media following or something could do that, but I've not heard it. Have you heard that, Stevon? Because you're out there in influencer land. Like, have you heard of people being able to just like get right out of school, have a private practice, and have a full caseload of full fee, high paying clients?
I have not heard that in all these years. I've not heard that in all these years. And this is, going on, sheesh, what is that? Like 15 years of doing this or more?
Sure.
Yeah, no, I've not come across that individual that started private practice and it was completely exactly how they wanted it and designed to perfection. And they started charging a high fee immediately and just kind of, running with that, or full fee or whatever. Yeah, that's never happened. There is a buildup. There is work that's done. And it's not I guess I don't see it as like a settling. Again, I think all of that stuff helps shape you into being a better therapist, help being a better clinician, just being kind of better at this craft. And also understanding yourself, like, just to say, I don't want to do that, and you've not done it before. How do you know? Why? What's the reason? Can you explain or elaborate on that? Again, in school, I knew I was going to work with couples. I worked with couples for years. And then I realized, you know what? One, I'm probably not as good as I thought I was going to be at doing this. Like, I had an inflated sense of self. I was like, oh, I'm going to be kick ass at working with couples. I'm going to be amazing. I did help some people I did not. And I just wasn't as good as I thought I was going to be. And I was like, oh, that's not really fair to them. And it's also not really serving me because I don't feel great about the work I'm doing. So yeah, I should probably back out of this, and that's okay.
If you've been considering switching to private pay and are unsure how to attract and retain clients, Thrizer can be your best resource. How? Thrizer actually helps you transform out-of-network therapy to look and feel like an in-network experience for clients with out-of-network benefits.
First, Thrizer can help clients instantly verify their out-of-network benefits, providing them complete transparency on the cost of therapy ahead of their first session. Then, just by charging your clients via Thrizer's payment platform, you can automatically submit claims for them, offload all the insurance stress onto Thrizer, and even let your clients just pay their coinsurance for sessions, similar to in-network copays, to help them afford therapy upfront and skip the long reimbursement wait. Thrizer covers the rest of your fees, so you get paid in full upfront and waits for reimbursement on your client's behalf.
They also have a super bill uploads feature, which is completely free for therapists. If you'd like to instead offer your clients a resource to manage their own super bills, they manage all claims end to end, so you or your clients don't need to deal with any of the insurance stress. Visit join.thrizer.com/modern therapist to get started and use our promo code modern therapists to start your free trial and receive waived fees for your first $2,500 in payments.
I'd mentioned earlier about, kind of the expectations of coming into the field, and with the preponderance of influencers and content creators who happen to be therapists, I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm like, are there many people who are like, this is actually the realities of getting into this field that is setting up the generation of therapists who are coming in to be like, no, this is the day to day. This is what we have to do. Like, it's not just like I'm Stevon and I go and see my awesome high achieving clients and then I, just float into the next room and it's just like I continue to be awesome for the rest of the day. Like,
That's exactly how it works, actually.
Okay. I'm all ears because I'm just going to ask, like, what is the struggles that you go on with that you have to tend to maintain what you've got going on?
Oh man, so the behind the scenes, right?
Yes, let's get behind the scenes.
Yeah, okay, let's peel back the curtain, everybody. Yeah, so it might look nice and shiny. I am a operation of one. It's me, and I kind of contract with places to get support. So you'll hear me do all these things, and it's me managing that stuff. So, like, I have a podcast, but the way that's worked is I work with a production company. They found me, and I'm kind of like the talent. So I've found a way to where they do all the stuff, and they will provide me a fee, and I show up and kind of do my part, and that's how we work as a team. I probably wouldn't have a podcast if that were the case, because it is a ton of work to produce something of quality. Anybody can kind of record on their phone or what have you, but if you really wanted to kind of monetize it at some point, or for it to feel and sound uh, you know, professional, that takes a lot of time and effort. And I told you about kind of me in efficiency, that wouldn't really sit well with how my character or personality is set up. And so, yeah, like I'll see clients, and then I will do speaking engagements, and I do all this other stuff, but I have to like manage all that. There's a lot of back and forth in emails. I have to get contracts read and signed, and, I've got to be on top of that, follow up. Uh, yeah, it's not easy, but it's also something that I factored in to what I thought private practice was going to be for me. That I was going to do a bunch of different things to make money and to be kind of successful in this. And it's not, always glamorous. That, sometimes it takes 2 months to secure a speaking fee, and there's a lot of back and forth, and they want to see your deck first, and then they want to have a call with you and different people, and then they got to go back and talk to their team, and then you don't get paid that same day. It's so you're like, oh, I did this thing and we negotiated on this fee, and now it's, they have like a net 60, and it's like 60 days before you will get your check, and you're like, huh, I needed that money when I did it, like not 60 days later. But I mean, again, you get yourself set up so that that's sustainable, so that you have clients you see individually or weekly, that, float you until you get the bigger hits. And it's all something that you have to develop. Or when I do my social media, I don't have some bot, it's me responding. And sometimes I do that in pockets, and you have to find ways to set that up so that it's sustainable. So kind of the way I operate is first thing in the morning, and I'm not recommending this for anybody, I kind of get up and have my coffee, and that's when I do my social media post. And then throughout the day, I'll comment, because you got to be active on the apps to continue the engagement. And, I do all that stuff. That's me kind of in between time, but I found ways to do it to where it's not taking away from, it's kind of, okay, I'm on here purposefully.
I want you to talk a little bit more about that, because I think one of the things that has been the hardest for me is the social media element, because I find myself on there, and for a while I was doing posting and that kind of stuff. I actually am barely posting at all. So I'm not doing it well at all, Stevon, but the challenge is going in and responding and being present without it kind of having that mental health suck, that dissociative suck of being on social media. How do you do that? Because I know you're barely on social media except for your actual posts. So how do you do that?
Oh, very strategically. So the way I think it's my mindset. I try to tell people with social media, you're on there for a purpose, and don't overthink it. So the way I do it is like I kind of do a low Oh, this is probably going to sound terrible, but it's who I am. This is a safe space, right, everyone? I do this in a way that is really low effort. You will see that most of my posts are kind of recycled from something somebody else did, and I will write a caption that is unique. But I tag the people that I borrow stuff from because that's the appropriate etiquette on social media to do. So I'm fair there. But yeah, I'm not making a bunch of original content of shooting videos because that's a heavy lift. It's a high investment. And the ROI on that, I have not seen to where it's super beneficial in that way, where it's worth, the amount of time it would take me to do that and edit stuff and make it look all nice. It's not worth it for me. But yeah, like I'll post, and then what I'll do is I'll kind of come back midday and look at the comments. And then I'll just kind of go through and comment either some emojis or something that I think is, kind of my personality, funny dig way of saying things. And then get out of there again and go see some clients or, send some emails and, pop back in. But the goal is saying like, I am on here to kind of engage people. It's part of my brand. It's part of the work I do. So it's no different from if I'm responding to a client email or something. I'm not upset about that. Like, oh, why is this client emailing me? They had a question about the homework or what we talked about, and that's appropriate. And so if I did a post and somebody had a concern about it, then, we talk about it. Or if somebody commented and it resonated with them, I encourage that stuff. That doesn't feel like a heavy lift for me. So I think like if you are posting in a way to where you aren't kind of overthinking the caption or you aren't kind of having to create a ton of original content, then it's sustainable. But if I had to like shoot a video every day to post, I would not post either. I wouldn't post either. I wouldn't. And I think also another thing because I think I've been so, I get kind of myopic in the way that I operate. And so I just do that thing and I just drill down on it. And so everything is imposter syndrome. People will start to send you videos or clips or, social media posts that sound like something you might post. And oftentimes it's like, oh, so thank you in my DMs for sending me this thing. Now I don't even have to go search for content. They sent me the thing, I added to this save folder, and then I just go pick from that. Like the day before, I just kind of, the night before here's my process. The night before I'll look in that save folder. Oh, I think I want to talk about this picture. So then when I wake up in the morning, then I just kind of grab that picture and, post it and then write my caption. That's the cheat code.
Thank you, Stevon.
Did you always do it that way?
Yeah. So oh, wow. People are really learning a lot about Stevon Lewis today. Jeez. this is like, it's become a therapy session, right? So yeah, I do things in a way to where I choose me. I do things, I run my own race. And that's someone I've been for a very, very long time, like since elementary school. And so I do things that are done in a way to where maybe it's not how everybody else would do it. I'm not really concerned with how other people get stuff done. I need to do what works for me and what's going to be the least amount of effort to get the maximum amount of results. So I like to have good outcomes. I like to have good results. I like stuff to be at a certain level. I don't want to just, half-ass it, but also I don't want to give so much that like athletes understand this. Like you don't want to go into the red, right? Like I don't want to go into sacrificing so much to get that to happen because I can't do that. And so I'm a turtle. So I got to find the turtle way to get stuff out there that's going to be of good quality. And so when you ask like, is that the way I've always done it? Yeah, I didn't do social media until I found a way to where I could do it and it wasn't a heavy lift. So I was probably late to getting on Instagram and Facebook. Even the way I do social media, like I'm not on every platform. I don't use every app. And I think people have to be okay with that. Like, oh, I've got to post to Twitter and then I've got to post to LinkedIn and I've got to post to, Instagram. And now I've got to do TikTok because they've opened this thing up. And now they're talking about bringing Vine back. And now I've got to, no, you don't have to do that. I post on Instagram and I will take that Instagram post and I just started putting that on LinkedIn. That's all I do. I copy and paste from what I wrote on Instagram and I post it on LinkedIn. So the LinkedIn post is just a repeat of what I did on Instagram. that's like the lowest lift you can give. And I'm not concerned if people are like, oh, this is redundant, or you have low engagement on YouTube. You know what it would take for me to have a robust YouTube is more effort than I'll be willing to put in. And I think people need to get to a place where they can accept and be okay with doing what they need to do to get the results they want for themselves, and not trying to mirror or be what they see everyone else doing.
As you're building this, there's places where it feels like you've been very successful, places where I'm sure you've sloughed off things that didn't work. What are the things that you're kind of striving for now? Because you're constantly shifting, right? You're constantly growing. I mean, I think you're pretty solidly in the imposter syndrome space. That's definitely very clear. But what are the changes that you're seeing as you go forward?
Ooh, more behind the scenes. Sorry. I love it. So the new shift you will see is, I kind of talked about at the top of this episode, is the radical acceptance of self. And so I'm strategically starting to pivot my conversation when I talk about imposter syndrome to infuse it with the concept of radical acceptance of self, because I think that is really the antidote to imposter syndrome. And so having this conversation of, how are you being proud of yourself? How are you being okay with yourself as you are continuing to work to be a better version of that? And that because you haven't reached your goal doesn't mean you aren't a fantastic or amazing or doing phenomenal job. And that's kind of the pivot I'm making. And I'm trying to do that more through speaking, and less through kind of one-to-one work. And so this is, when I talk about kind of copying and pasting to LinkedIn, that's my low effort way of trying to engage a different kind of community. And so I think the LinkedIn community will lend itself to having me, I guess, engage in that conversation through speaking as opposed to one-to-one work. And so that's why I'm kind of starting to explore that platform.
Where can people find out more about you and your practice and all of the wonderful ventures that you're doing?
Well, if they listen to this podcast, you all will put it in the show notes, and they connect it to the website. So come to this podcast first. Also, website is kind of a hub for me, and I've made it, again, branding. Attach yourself to your brand. Attach yourself to the work that you do. It's StevonLewis.com. You don't have to figure out some fancy language or remember some moniker that I came up with. If you Google my name, you're like, I can't remember. I remember that dude Stevon said something. It'll come up. You'll find my website. It'll be me. And you'll see a picture of my face. And I attach yourself to what it is that you do. Like, you want to be connected to it. And I know that there's this thing of where I don't even know if it's like taught in school anymore, but like there was the idea of like, you don't want to be the kind of star. It's not about you. It's about the work you do and everybody else. And I guess I'm like, well, how do people find me if they want to work with me? Then if I'm not attaching myself to it. And so, use your government name. I think that's the easiest. Make sure you have pictures of you doing the work you do, or if you're speaking, or just pictures, headshots. People got to go to your website. They need to be able to see you and find you, because people make connections before they reach out. And I think that's important for you to understand, that if you have, only a picture of a flower and, a name, I don't know that people don't think you're a bot or something. And I think, you got to find a way that you're real. Like, this is the world we live in. You attach it to yourself, attach it to who you are. I am my brand. They're working with Stevon. They aren't working with, the fashionable therapist or something like that.
We'll include links to Stevon's stuff in our show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. Follow us on our social media. Join our Facebook group, the Modern Therapist Group, to continue on with these discussions. And until next time, I'm Curt Widhelm with Katie Vernoy and Stevon Lewis. Feeling stuck with SEO for your therapy practice? There's hope. Head to simplifiedseoconsulting.com/modern therapist and unlock your website's SEO potential with simplified SEO consulting. Use code Modern Therapist for a discount and mention the Modern Therapist Survival Guide podcast for a special offer on done for you SEO this summer. Let's build your dream practice together.
Charge your full rate with confidence with Thrizer. Thrizer takes care of 100% of the insurance stress and helps your clients skip the long reimbursement wait, giving you a powerful tool to attract and retain out-of-network clients with ease. Check out our special link, join.thrizer.com/modern therapist, and use the code Modern Therapists to activate $2,500 in free payments with Thrizer.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide. Learn more about who we are and what we do at mtsgpodcast.com. You can also join us on Facebook and Twitter. And please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes.